Have you ever felt that your intelligence wasn't making your life better, but somehow worse? That every insight you gained seemed to push people further away, leaving you isolated and misunderstood? You're not imagining it. You're living a truth Carl Jung warned about nearly a century ago. Society isn't structured to reward deep intelligence. It's structured to punish it. And the sharper your mind, the heavier the weight you carry in today's world. The clearer you see, the more alone you become. This isn't an accident. It's not bad luck. It's the inevitable cost of seeing the world as it really is. High intelligence is supposed to be an advantage. It's supposed to open doors, make life easier, give you choices most people never have. But if you've lived it, you know the truth feels very different. The more clearly you see the world, the harder it becomes to live in it. The more insight you gain, the more it seems to pull you away from others instead of closer to them. It's a paradox. And for centuries, the brightest minds have lived it. Socrates questioned the values of Athens and was put on trial for corrupting the youth. His real crime? Challenging people to think for themselves. Galileo looked through his telescope and proved the earth revolves around the sun and was placed under house arrest for life. Not because he was wrong, but because he was right too soon. Even Carl Jung himself, the man whose insights transformed psychology, was cast out by his closest peers after breaking from Freud. Not because his ideas lacked merit, but because they cut too deep into truths the world wasn't ready to face. These people didn't fail because they lacked intelligence. They suffered precisely because they had it, and because they dared to use it. This is the first unspoken law of human society. It will always resist those who see too much, too clearly, too soon. Why? Because truth is uncomfortable. It threatens the fragile stories people tell themselves just to get through the day. It disrupts the shared illusions that keep society running smoothly. And when you reveal those illusions, when you live in a way that exposes them just by being yourself, you become dangerous. Not because you're trying to harm anyone, but because you force them to face what they've worked so hard to avoid. Jung understood this better than anyone. He knew that intelligence is not just a skill or a gift. It's a burden that changes how you experience life itself. It shapes your relationships, your work, your very sense of belonging. And he saw clearly that the sharper your intellect, the heavier that burden becomes. Because once you see the world for what it truly is, you can never unsee it. So if you've ever felt misunderstood for the way your mind works, you're not imagining it. You're living the paradox of wisdom. The very thing that makes you extraordinary is the same thing that can set you apart sometimes for life. Ever noticed how the more honest you are, the quieter the room becomes? How many times have you stayed silent just to keep the peace? Jung understood this silence well. He wrote, "The more powerful and original a mind, the more it will incline towards the religion of solitude, not as a curse, but as the natural path for those who see the world too clearly, to live in constant noise." Why do people feel so uneasy around those who think more deeply? Why does intelligence, more than any other kind of strength, provoke discomfort instead of admiration? Psychologists call it the mirror effect. It's not just that intelligent people offer new ideas. It's that they become mirrors reflecting back to others their own limitations, their own blind spots, their own unacknowledged fears. And people don't forgive that easily. When you meet someone physically stronger than you don't feel personally attacked. You might even admire them. When someone is wealthier, you may envy them, but you can still respect the distance between you. But intelligence is different. It isn't just a skill, it's tied to identity itself. We define ourselves by our thoughts, our beliefs, our understanding of the world. So when someone's mind cuts deeper than our own, it can feel like a challenge to who we are, not just what we think, but to us. Carl Jung understood this as the collision between the shadow and the persona. The persona is the mask we wear to present ourselves to the world. The shadow is everything we hid: your insecurities, flaws, and uncomfortable truths. When you speak a truth others aren't ready to hear, you don't just share information, you rip a seam in that mask. You let the shadow leak out into the open. And when that happens, the mind's instinct is not gratitude, it's defense. This is why people may dismiss you, avoid you, or even subtly attack you. Not because you're wrong, but because being near you forces them to confront a part of themselves they'd rather keep buried. Ever noticed how some people suddenly change the subject when conversations drift beyond small talk? Or how your presence alone can make a room feel heavier, even when you've said almost nothing? That's the mirror effect at work. And for those who live with it, it can turn even ordinary social moments into a battlefield of unspoken truths. If the mirror effect explains the psychology of why people resist deep thinkers, neuroscience explains the biology behind it. When people feel intellectually outmatched, their brain's amygdalate fear center lights up. The amygdala is designed to detect threats and prepare the body for defense. And to the human brain, a threat to the ego can register almost the same as a threat to survival. Think about that. Your presence, your way of seeing the world, can trigger the exact same circuitry as a predator in the wild. This is why intelligent conversations can sometimes feel like confrontations, even when no hostility is intended. The other person's nervous system has already gone into protect mode. From an evolutionary perspective, this makes sense. For most of human history, survival depended less on being the smartest person in the tribe and more on being accepted by it. Challenging the group's shared beliefs risked destabilizing the fragile trust that kept everyone safe. Too much disruption could mean rejection, and in the ancestral world, rejection could mean death. Carl Jung described this as the power of the collective unconscious, a deep, ancient layer of the psyche that prioritizes the group's stability over individual truth. It resists anything that threatens the cohesion of the tribe, no matter how valuable or accurate that truth may be. This is why, even today, when we no longer live in small, vulnerable tribes, our nervous systems still act as though we do. We are wired to maintain group harmony, to avoid anything or anyone that might fracture it. Ever notice how voicing an unpopular truth in a meeting can change the entire atmosphere in seconds? That sudden shift in the room is not just social discomfort. It's an ancient survival instinct coming alive. Your intelligence in that moment isn't simply an asset. To the group's old wiring, it's a potential threat. Our ancestors had an excuse. They lived in small tribes where questioning the group could get you exiled. Back then, survival meant keeping the peace. But what's our excuse now? We live in vast, complex societies. We have freedom of speech, access to unlimited information, and yet, the same survival wiring still runs the show. Only now, it's been supercharged by modern systems. Social media has turned our craving for group approval into a marketplace. The algorithm doesn't reward depth, it rewards attention. And the fastest way to get attention is not through complex truth, but through simple, emotional, easy-to-share ideas. Viral content thrives on outrage, humor, and instant gratification. Thoughtful nuance? That's poison for engagement metrics. So the modern tribe doesn't exile you for questioning its beliefs. It just drowns you out. It buries you under a flood of noise until your voice is gone. It's the same in workplaces. Companies say they want innovation and critical thinking, but what they actually reward is cultural fit and uncritical compliance. The people who rise aren't the ones who challenge the system, but the ones who adapt to it, even when it's flawed. Education isn't much different. We pretend to value curiosity, but we test for memorization. We praise creativity in theory, but in practice, we standardize everything. From the classroom to the boardroom, the rule is the same. Don't disrupt the comfort zone. Ever notice how the most popular voices today are often the ones telling people exactly what they want to hear, and how those who dare to complicate the story are quietly ignored, if not mocked? In the modern tribe, truth doesn't win. Comfort does. Carl Jung didn't believe intelligence alone could save you. In fact, he warned that if your mind develops faster than your soul, you risk tearing yourself in two. We like to think of intelligence as a complete gift. The more you have, the better your life will be. But Jung saw something darker. High intelligence sharpens your perception. It lets you see patterns others miss, truths others avoid. But your intellect can't carry the full weight of those truths alone. Without emotional integration, without a deep connection to the unconscious, intelligence becomes a blade with no handle. It can cut through anything, but it can also cut you. Jung called the process of healing this split individuation, the lifelong work of uniting the conscious and the unconscious, your thinking mind with your deeper, feeling self. For most people, this process unfolds slowly, but for highly intelligent individuals, it often comes too soon, too intensely. You see too much before you know how to hold it. You face questions you don't yet have the emotional tools to answer. And modern society doesn't help. It pushes you to overdevelop the intellect while starving the soul. We train the mind to achieve, to analyze, to compete, but we rarely teach it how to rest, how to feel, how to live in harmony with what it knows. Ever felt like your mind was running years ahead of your heart? Like you could explain the meaning of life but couldn't feel at home in it? That's the split Jung warned about. It's not that you're broken, it's that your mind has outgrown the container of your current self. Until you bridge that gap, until intellect and soul speak the same language, your intelligence will always carry a shadow of pain. Isolation is not always a choice. Sometimes, it's the price of seeing what others can't. History remembers Friedrich Nietzsche as one of the most influential philosophers of all time. But in his own lifetime, he was largely ignored, his books misunderstood, his ideas distorted. As illness consumed his body and mind, he spent his final years in near-complete isolation, not because he lacked brilliance, but because his vision of truth was too unsettling for his age to embrace. Nikola Tesla dreamed of giving the world free, limitless energy, but his ideas threatened the financial empires of his time. Investors abandoned him, rivals undermined him, and the man who could have reshaped civilization died alone in a small New York hotel, room forgotten by the very world he tried to serve. Vincent van Gogh painted visions no one else could see. In his lifetime, he sold only one painting. The rest of the world called him unstable, difficult, mad. Today, his works are priceless. But he never lived to see the world finally understand him. Carl Jung himself was no stranger to this. After breaking from Freud, he endured years of professional exile. Many of his peers dismissed his ideas as mystical nonsense. It took decades for psychology to catch up, to see that he had been mapping the deepest structures of the human psyche all along. These stories share a common truth. Society rarely recognizes vision in the present. It takes the safe distance of time for people to embrace what once terrified them. Ever wondered why so many great minds are celebrated only after they're gone? Why understanding so often comes too late? Because to truly understand someone, you have to be willing to step outside your own comfort, and most people never do. So, the deep thinker waits, sometimes for years, sometimes for a lifetime, and sometimes they never see the recognition they deserve. Only the silence that comes when the world cannot yet meet them where they are. Why is it that so many of history's brightest minds lived such unhappy lives? Why does a gift that can illuminate reality so often cast a shadow over joy? Carl Jung believed that intelligence and happiness do not always walk hand in hand. Happiness, for most people, comes from belonging, from feeling in sync with the world around them. But the deeper your understanding, the harder it becomes to accept the world as it is. Once you've seen through the illusions that comfort others, you can't simply step back inside them. Psychologists today find that highly intelligent people are more prone to depression, anxiety, and existential crisis. Not because they are broken, but because they carry an awareness that is heavy to hold. They see the patterns of human folly, the repetition of mistakes, the fragility of meaning itself. And you can't unsee what you've seen. Jung knew that consciousness itself can be a burden. There is no coming to consciousness without pain, he wrote. The path of self-awareness demands that you confront truths others can ignore. It forces you into questions with no easy answers. And sometimes, those questions erode the simple pleasures that once sustained you. Ever catch yourself longing for the days when you didn't know so much? When the world felt larger, simpler, kinder, because you hadn't yet looked behind the curtain? This is the paradox of intelligence. The clearer your vision, the more you feel the cracks in the foundation. The more wisdom you gain, the harder it is to rest in ignorance, and the further happiness can drift from reach. If you've carried the weight of seeing too much, you know the temptation to retreat completely, to stop speaking, to stop trying to be understood. But Jung warned that isolation without purpose only feeds the darkness. The challenge is not to hide your depth, but to live with it wisely. First, find your tribe. Not everyone will understand you, and that's okay. You don't need 100 people who sort of get you. You need a few who truly do. Seek out those who are on their own path of individuation, whether through books, art, ideas, or quiet conversations that stretch into the night. Second, choose your moments. Not every room is ready for the truth you carry. Jung believed that wisdom includes knowing when to speak and when to let silence hold the space. Sometimes the most strategic move is not to fight every battle, but to keep your energy for the ones that matter. Third, turn pain into creation. For Jung, creativity was not a luxury, it was medicine. Paint Write, build, teach, whatever allows your inner world to flow outward. Transformation doesn't happen by thinking alone. It happens when you give form to what you feel and know. Ever noticed how the act of creating can take something heavy in your mind and make it lighter in your hands? Living as a deep thinker in a shallow world will never be effortless, but it can be meaningful. Your task is not to dim your light, but to place it where it can actually be seen, because in the end, your mind is not a burden to escape. It's a gift to be carried with grace. Survival is only the beginning. Jung believed that the real work of life is transformation, and transformation is never painless. He mapped this journey into 4 stages. A path he called individuation. It is the process of becoming whole. Stage 1. Persona, the mask you wear for the world. It's the version of yourself that wins approval, fits expectations, and hides what might cause rejection. Most people live here forever, protected, but never fully known. Stage 2. Shadow. Everything you've hidden from yourself, your flaws, fears, desires, and even your unused strengths. Meeting the shadow is uncomfortable. It strips away illusions and demands radical honesty. It's where the pain begins, because you realize you've been both more and less than you thought you were. Stage 3. Anima, animus. The inner feminine and masculine energies that shape how you love, create, and relate. Integrating them means confronting your projections, seeing people as they truly are, not as you wish them to be. It's here that many relationships are tested and some end. Stage 4. The self. The point where all parts of you, light and shadow, strength and vulnerability, come together. Not perfection. Integration. This is where you finally stop fighting yourself. Ever wonder why deep personal growth often feels like falling apart first? Because in Jung's model, you must dismantle the false self before the true one can emerge. The journey hurts. It will cost you comfort, illusions, and sometimes the people who can't walk with you any further. But it gives you something greater, a life that is finally your own. If you've ever felt misunderstood, if you've ever carried truths that made you feel alone, remember this: you're not broken, you're awake. Society resists you, not because you're wrong, but because your clarity is exactly what it needs to change. Your depth of thought isn't a flaw, it's your greatest strength. Your isolation isn't meaningless. It's part of your path toward becoming who you truly are. So don't dim your light. Don't hide your voice. Find others like you. Build the connections that matter. Speak your truth, gently but powerfully, because the world fears intelligence for one reason only. It has the power to wake people from comfortable illusions. And that's exactly why it needs you. If this message spoke to you, tell me your story in the comments below. Your voice matters here, and there are more of us than you think. And if you want to go deeper into these conversations, hit subscribe, not just to follow a channel, but to be part of a growing circle of awake minds, people who see the world for what it is and who refuse to look away. Let's keep this dialogue alive. Let's awaken together.